In this week's segment, we're going to revisit something we talked about setting up last week in our segment. We're into spraying soybeans, been going for a while now. Kind of thought we'd look at how do we evaluate our performance and how do we know the weeds are going to die. We've been kind of familiar the last few years with the burners, the flex stars, the cobras, the stuff that we had talked about where it's a coverage play. We have to get good coverage on all the plant and all the growing points, and it turns them brown within a day or two, and it's generally fairly easy to tell a week later, for the most part, are we going to start to see some regrowth, and are we actually going to finish that plant off. Usually after a week, if it's got a lot of green to it on some of the growing points, that's probably not a good thing, and that's somewhat fairly easy to evaluate, especially 10 days or 2 weeks later. But I thought we'd maybe revisit a little bit the new Xtend technology, the dicamba beans, if you will. We've been here before, those of you that remember back in the corn days of spraying Banville or Clarity or even Marksman, how those weeds looked, what all happened down the road. They stay green forever. They twist up into a knot. The growing points hopefully are twisted up and took up enough active ingredient to translocate and get to it. But how do we evaluate that, and what's that look like? So I thought we'd take a closer look here and kind of evaluate a few different weeds and a few different ways to identify are we performing or not. Here is a water hemp plant that's had XtendiMax and Roundup on it 8 days ago. You can see the twisting. The growing points all look screwed up. It's taken up the product. It's gotten to all these. The other thing that sometimes you can tell if we've got enough uptake is that plant gets real brittle, and if we can push on that and it cracks off at the stem, that's a good sign. You can kind of see that stem is swollen. It's bigger than it normally would be, and it's kind of got a lot of deformity there, so that's another indication that we got good uptake and we probably have that plant finished. Here is a twisted up velvet leaf, or commonly known as a buttonweed. Roundup and XtendiMax again 8 days ago. You can see how it's, the twisted up, the growing points look all gnarled. The other thing to note on these growth regulator herbicides, oftentimes they basically alter the plant's hormones and it'll grow to death. It'll put too many of the wrong hormones in the wrong timing, and that's why it kind of twists and gnarls. You can see this stem on this velvet leaf, how it's all exploded and growing way too big and it's cracking. That's very, very brittle. That's good. That's what we want to see. That basically is telling us that it's a dead plant, but that's another symptom to look for. If you push on that velvet leaf plant, it'll crack really easy right where that swollen stem is. So that's telling us we got really good uptake. When we kill a weed, this being a water hemp, when we kill it with Roundup, this is kind of what it looks like. This is 8 days after application. Obviously this is a non-Roundup resistant water hemp, but this is kind of just wilts, starts to collapse on the ground, and that's kind of what Roundup kills the weeds like. That's kind of what we wanted to visit about this week. That's kind of what's really going on today, and we'll see you next week.